Hello. Hopefully you can you can hear us now. Apologies about that. I don't know what's going on with our mic this evening. It's not a good omen, is it? Apologies for that. I've come back in on the phone, which seems to have worked a little bit better. So apologies. Anyway, the Norwich City team news is Kovacevic in goal. A back four for the moment, although we'll debate this in a moment. It's Stacey, Medic, Darling, and Kenny McLean as the four. Topic, Matson as the midfield two. Schwartau and Makama on either flank, with Liam Gibbs behind Josh Sargent. The subs bench, Dan Grimshaw, Fisher, McConville, Schlupp, Wright, Marcondes, Cianas, Tony Springer, and Mate Jurasek. So we'll just run you through that. Again, Kovacevic in goal, Stacey, Medic, Darling, and McLean as a four. Topic and Matson as a midfield two, with Schwartau and Makama either side of Liam Gibbs, who is behind of Josh Sargent. Thoughts, Paddy?
Do we think it is a 4 though?
Well, that's maybe the debating point, isn't it?
Because there's been a suggestion that it might be a 3 with McLean on the left-hand side. So, and as we look out now, those players, Norwich players, are just taking their first look at the Pride Park playing surface. So it's not beyond the realms. It could be a 3. We can't confirm either way, but McLean at left back. Yeah, could see that. But equally, I could see it a 3 with Medic, Darling, McLean, Stacey, and maybe Schwartau as wing backs. That'd be a central 2 of Matson and Topic, and then you'd go effectively going back to maybe what we saw at the start of the season. Then the 2 10s behind Sargent of Gibbs and Makama, because otherwise, you could. Yeah, I mean Gibbs playing in the 10, you could see that. I think he was hot in that area of the pitch in the last game or two that he came on, but. I wouldn't rule it out. That's what I'm going to say. I wouldn't rule it out, but we have no official confirmation on that. But irrespective, I think it tells you what he thinks of where Cernak and Jurasek are at the moment, and both of those start this game on the bench. And Schlupp, clearly, that must be fitness related. They just don't feel he's got the engine to go 2 games in quick succession at the moment. So hence why we're debating what does it mean for Kenny McLean? I think what it means definitively, he won't be in midfield. It's just, where is he in terms of that defensive unit? And of course, Kenny McLean playing on the left-hand side of a back 4/3. It's not something we haven't seen before. He can do it, but again, it's probably going to throw up a few question marks around the squad depth or lack of, should we say.
Yeah, hopefully. I'm just double checking that team now because we've been thrown out of whack a little bit with the sound issues, but we're with you now. That looks right to me. I don't think I've got anyone in there twice or anyone who shouldn't be in there. I'm sure you will all tell me if that's the case. Yeah, I think that base formation is really interesting for me because the way it's kind of been presented to us is maybe a return to what we saw earlier on in the season in terms of that quite flexible back 3 where the left back will tuck in and it will become more of a 5 out of possession. I guess we'd be looking at Schwartau with that, and then maybe Makama and Sargent as a more conventional 2 with Gibbs sort of spearheading a midfield 2 of Topic and Matson maybe, but we'll see what that looks like. Certainly gives them the option to be a bit more direct. And I mean, Paddy, you think about what Liam Manning was discussing yesterday. He was speaking about the athleticism, physicality of Derby. Is there an element to this side, do you think, of trying to deal with that, particularly, I think, putting Topic into midfield for one? When you think about, I've not seen their team yet, but I'm guessing it's Ozo and Adams as their midfield 2, very physical lads. There's going to be an element of competing here tonight, isn't there, in that area of the pitch?
And Makama as well, given his physicality. That would chime with how he maps out the challenge that you might get from a John Eustace side. He said it would be a very tough physical assignment. So you want legs and you want runners, and you look through that team, and I note the comments about where no Jacob Wright again. But if that's your mindset tonight, as it has been in most of these recent games under Liam Manning, then you're going to go with, like it or not, Matson, a top pitch profile of midfielder with Makama and Schwartau and Gibbs to an extent, also adding a similar type of attribute. Feels very samey to me. Hence the debate again that will begin, no doubt, around Jacob Wright. But maybe if you think that's what you're going to face tonight from a Derby team, it's worth reiterating. Like Norwich haven't won a game in front of their own fans, so they're going to be pretty desperate to put that right. And that might add a degree of intensity and maybe directness in the Derby approach. And if that is the case, then he's obviously trying to counteract that with that 11. With the asterisks, we're still not quite sure how that lines up.
Yes, this is an interesting one from Ali in terms of 1-1. We'll come to that in just a minute. But that left back slot, I mean, Kenny McLean, I think, is the fifth player to play in it this season. If it is a left back slot, that left side of defence, obviously Kruzene out, Mahovo out as well for a little bit of time again. Is there any surprise for you that he's dropped Kenny McLean in there? Callum Fisher on the bench, Jeffrey Schlupp, I think we spoke about this on the way up. I think we'd have both been really shocked if he could go again after playing and starting at the weekend, whilst they're clearly still in a phase of kind of building up his fitness. It's clearly a role we've seen Kenny McLean in before, but are you surprised that he's gone to it, given he's got Fisher on the bench?
No, and it's not really a reflection on Kellen Fisher necessarily, but what did he again talk about yesterday? I need to find leaders. That's what he was talking about. And okay, it's frustrating that at this stage, 10 games into Liam Manning, that it's still about behaviours and it's still about that. It's the character element rather than that's a given. That's already in this team now, whoever he selects. And now it's adding the technical and the quality level to that in terms of control of the ball, chance creation, then clinical edge. It feels like we're still, unfortunately, in this sort of first building phase. And if that is the case, and he talked about it again yesterday, I need to find some leaders. Then McLean is that. There's absolutely no doubt in this group of players, he is the leader. And that's why I think it's you accommodate him where you can in this side, rather than, for me, it's a negative towards Kellen Fisher. I just think, as he said yesterday, we talked about bandwidth and didn't reference the individual players, but he said there's 3 or 4, I think, in this side he knows he's going to get now every week, every performance. Kenny McLean must come into that category, I would think. And I thought, as frustrating as, again, it was against Bristol City, he was the only one for me that was trying to break that lateral side-to-side motion and try and actually inject some progressive going forward momentum. He's going to struggle to do that, obviously, if he's in a defensive unit, but at least he was somebody who was trying to alter what again felt a very stodgy kind of one-dimensional performance. So no, I can see why he's gone with McLean on the leadership front, on the character front, and it's really interesting. Topic. I'll go back to that Portsmouth game, albeit he was alongside a certain Chilean who we don't need to mention, but he looked to cut above the championship. You remember him at Fratton Park that Saturday morning? He was powerfully gliding through central midfield areas, his passing range, the physicality he added to his game. Where's that player? That player is, we've not seen him for too many weeks, and no surprise to me that he was dipped out because his levels had dropped. Probably inevitable given, he'd been pitched in the deep end. It was a day or two, wasn't it, after his signing, and he's straight in against Middlesbrough on the opening day. But he had no doubt dropped off. Hopefully, if he's had a little, spell out the sidelines, as Liam Manning was talking about, can't think who he's referring to, Tony Springett, funny enough, about it just gives them a greater appreciation maybe when they've been out of it. In his case, not so much for injury, but just selection. Maybe there's a little added element of, okay, I'm back in tonight, I'm going to maybe try and recapture what we saw in those opening games where you thought this is going to be a player who's going to be very important to Norwich in the Championship. So far, it hasn't happened.
No, it hasn't. Let's bring you that Derby team. They line up a very attacking lineup, actually. It's Zetterstrom in goal. Max Johnston, who was a one-time target for Norwich City a couple of summers ago, he starts at right back. Clark and Sanderson as the defensive two. Elder, formerly of Ipswich Town, at left back. Ebu Adams captains the team alongside Ozo in midfield. And then a front four of Brereton Diaz, we're expecting Adjuman to play there as well. And then Brewster behind Carlton Morris. So, I mean, that front four, really, Brereton Diaz, Adjuman, somebody who they played or paid, I think, £7-8 million for from the US. I think it was Dean Smith's team, wasn't it? Charlotte FC at the time. Someone who is vying with Josh Sargent for those US men's national team spot ahead of the World Cup. Rhian Brewster and, of course, Carlton Morris. That is a very offensive lineup from a Derby team that, as John Eustace said, after what was a poor defeat at Oxford on Saturday, he is absolutely desperate for a response. And like you say, they'll be desperate to get off the mark here at home today. And they'll see tonight as a real opportunity, won't they?
Yeah, you just took the words out of my mouth there, Connor. I mean, they will look at this Norwich team and think these are ripe for putting to the side and getting that first win and releasing that pressure that, as we've all experienced at Carrow, you can imagine is in this crowd here. This is a big club at this level, big fan base, big expectations, like Norwich. They've been languishing too long and even had to drop down, and obviously Paul Warren was able to bring them back before he moved on. And you'd imagine that they're not happy with what they've seen thus far, certainly here at home, not to have won a game everything that the Norwich fans are feeling when they turn up at Carrow Road. So, yeah, I think that lineup from John Eustace today is symptomatic of a head coach who knows today is a great opportunity against the Norwich team, who, you know, even the away element of the season, which was probably the more positive side of the Liam Manning project thus far, even that for me, and that's, you think Coventry, you think Stoke, yes, they got results, but by desperation in terms of the defensive effort more than anything else, and maybe some poor finishing from those two teams. Then they go to Ipswich. Yes, first 45 minutes, that press did give Ipswich some concern, but I don't think there was any debating who was the better side on the day in terms of the attacking potential. So even the away part of this Liam Manning line has now, for me, dipped in the wrong direction. And if that is the case, allied to what they're not doing at Carrow Road, this is, from a Derby perspective, yeah, a real opportunity for them tonight. And he's probably stacking up his attacking options to try and probe for vulnerability, because they will know the psychology of this. You know, if they get into Norwich early, Norwich concede early, this home crowd are fully behind them. You know, then it's another test of character. And if we're being honest, there's been occasions this season, I'm thinking of Wrexham particularly, that 3-goal burst in 13 minutes, or whatever it was. Even Saturday, once Bristol scored, you put that stat out. They had 9 shots in a 2-minute spell or something. You know, the wheels come off too much with this group of Norwich players at the minute. And if you're John Eustace, you'll be looking to try and get them in that game state as soon as possible, and then probe for fresh vulnerability. So probably bring us back full circle to why he's gone with the McLean tonight in a defensive setup, and maybe brought in 1 or 2 other more experienced players and dropped out a Cernach, dropped out a Jurasek. For me, that smacks of he's coming here, and if he can get back on the coach and he's got a draw, he'll be happy.
Yeah, which is quite something against a team that's not won at home, right? But
Yeah.
I guess reflects where Norwich are at this moment in time. I mean, that attacking quartet of Derby, Adjaman, Brewster, Morris, Brereton, Diaz, does that explain for you why we're potentially talking, and we'll see obviously how it translates come kickoff, but if it is a back three, does that make sense given the attacking firepower they've got, even if they haven't quite found their rhythm as of yet, because they're below Norwich in the table?
Only on goal difference.
Only on
yeah.
1 goal, yeah.
1 goal is it? Yeah. Just some going for Norwich, given a few goals they've scored of late. Yeah, I mean, how do they normally set up then?
4-2-3-1 typically. So Brereton on Saturday, I think it was Brereton, Diaz, and Andy Vyman was on the right.
Yeah.
With Brewster behind Morris. So that was the way they kind of set up.
Yeah.
But I think Derby fans have recognised it a little bit more as a 4-2-4. So again, there is probably an area in midfield where if Norwich can get control, there might be a room for them to get some of their forward players a little bit more involved in the game because of the space.
Yeah, true. And as always with these things,
But they've got to do it.
they've got to be able to do it. Yeah, and that would place a huge onus on Matson and Topic, 2 very inexperienced players in terms of championship. Every game they turn up to this season, it's certainly away. It's a new experience. It's a new team. There's a lot of responsibility now being put on their shoulders, and if it is McLean, as we can, I think, pretty much assume, is not in that central midfield equation. So if Derby do get the upper hand there, then what was that?
Just reading it about having to rate through the shrapnel of another rubbish performance is not the most fun.
Yeah, the only saving grace is we're only 3 hours from home here.
That's true.
We're not,
That's true.
heaven forbid, Swansea on a Saturday night with hours to go to dissect another defeat. But trying to be positive here, Connor, don't bring us down. So
blame whoever commented that on this today, but yeah.
But it really is. Tonight is, you just hope it, going back to my point about Topics, we've seen, albeit a very small sample, albeit maddeningly inconsistent with him so far, but he has at times looked like he's dare I say it, a cut above this league. Now, he hasn't done that anywhere near enough. I think there's been some positive signs from Matson so far as well. Yeah, there's a few rough edges and a few elements.
No helping anyone with cramps.
That's what I was thinking when I was saying that. Yeah. And I was thinking, the way...
I see Rob Butler down there. He's still furious about that, if you mention it.
But there was the Ipswich episode as well with Philogene. He got brushed off too easy. So you just hope those two as a collective, because they were bought for me to be, in this Manning rebuild, pretty key figures, in this central midfield. And I'm trying to think, would this be the first time they've been together as a two from the start?
Yeah, I think it would be.
Yeah, so that in itself is a little bit of a landmark if it is. And tonight, what can we hope for at a minute? And that's all we are basing a lot of this on, is hope. But if we can leave here tonight and you've seen something which suggests, I like Matson and Topic together. There's some potential in that central midfield coupling, then you know, maybe we can leave it with a little bit more positivity than maybe we arrived. But to do that, yeah, they're going to have to be against some very experienced players as well. We're talking about the attacking potential in the Derby side. There's quite a number of those names who've been around the block. Go on, mate.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in because we're getting a lot of Jacob Wright related questions.
Yeah.
I guess we can throw McConville in with that as well. Look, two players that signed in January. I think Jacob Wright has shown a huge amount of promise towards the back end of last season in very difficult circumstances. Hasn't played a minute since that red card against Middlesbrough. Rory McConville hasn't played a minute in the Championship, full stop. Group them together. Are you a little bit shocked so far that we've got to game 11 as we are tonight, and we're talking about those two players who, the club signed as very young, talented, up-and-coming operators? The fact that their football has been so limited in recent weeks, and in McConville's case this season.
Well, start with him. Manning doesn't fancy him, does he? He was inherited on his watch. You go back to when he came through the door, and both Johannes and Ben Napper were chiming him up as not for the here and now, but everything about him in terms of leadership and the type of character he was and the schooling he'd had at Brighton in the Premier League. He was one to build something around. Fast forward, we've got a new head coach in town. He hasn't played him at all. We're now even at the point where Shane Duffy, who would look to me like he was part of the bomb squad, and if there'd have been, interest that made sense for all parties in the summer, I think that deal gets done and he's out the door. Now
I think he might play Saturday.
I'm just going to say now it's counting the hours until he comes back in against Swansea. That's what it feels like. So, which is another slap down for McConville. So, I'm afraid he's probably questioning what on earth he did moving here. Now, I mean, hindsight and all that.
I spoke to him in pre-season. It was after the very first game against Northampton, and I said, "Look, for here, are you going to have to go out on loan?" And he basically said, "Yeah, because I can't afford another season of not playing." He did that last year. He started the season with an injury, then he moved to Norwich and didn't get much minutes. I mean, this is a very, an international. We can talk about the country that he's playing for, but he's a fully fledged international, and he's not. Thank you very much, and he's just not getting a kick at the minute. And that must be incredibly infuriating for him, somebody who made a move with a real desire to kick on and progress his career and get closer to senior football. He hasn't really.
I mean, it's difficult because of the change that comes with a new head coach, and particularly one who I think we will all agree now on many levels, very different to his predecessor. So, and this is part of the issue when you look at the recruitment now. It feels like you've almost got this hodgepodge of a squad where there's player profiles that were for Johannes, and now there's increasingly going to be ones that are more for Liam Manning and what fits his eye. Hence, probably why Liam Gibbs has come back into the equation. I don't think he'd have got too many minutes under Johannes. And that leads me into going into Jacob Wright. Well, he's more of a puzzler because at the start of the season, he has impressed Liam Manning enough to be starting. And that's what it's come down to, yeah. The shades. We're wearing them tonight, though, to be fair. But Jacob Wright, having got into the side, and again, another one who was seen to be a poster boy for what Ben Napper is trying to build here at Norwich. It is very, very strange. Almost you can't really comprehend post-Borough when it hasn't worked in terms of creativity, in terms of midfield control, in terms of linking to Sargent, in terms of chance creation, goals. If it was a case that he'd come out the side through his own error against Middlesbrough, and the players who'd come in had kicked on.
I guess this is the counter, isn't it, that Matt has made. Wright is another defensive midfielder, though, not a number 10.
No.
So where would he fit in your head into this current midfield? Where does he come in to? Is it about, are we talking instead of Liam Gibson playing a bit more of a flat three and having him at the base of something? Because then it feels like we're probably going to have some more conversations about the creativity or lack of. Where do you see him slotting into this team? I agree, Jacob. In my view, Jacob Wright should be playing more games of football, but to kind of play devil's advocate a little bit.
Well, I'll come back to you on that. I mean, against Middlesbrough at home, the game where he did get himself sent off, but in that first half, anybody on here tonight can argue different, but that for me was the most control Norwich have exuded at Carrow Road in terms of on the ball, in terms of in the opponent's half, in terms of dominating possession and territory, but actually possession with a purpose. They had 60% on Saturday. How much of that was Kovacevic and the two centre-backs?
Well, Kovacevic have more touches than any of their front three on Saturday.
60% possession when the ball is spending more time with your keeper and centre-backs, for me, pointless, Whereas that Middlesbrough game, which was right and was toppage, set the foundation. And obviously, the wheels came off. He got himself stupidly sent off, and that game ran away from him.
Has he been punished too much for that tackle, do you think?
Well, he has, because he's not got a look in since. Not to have kicked a ball since, 5 games, is it?
5 games, yeah.
In a team who haven't picked up the baton and ran with it. we're still tonight talking about will we see something more control, more midfield, territorial creativity. And no, he isn't the type who's going to go past 5 players and bend it in the top corner. He's not an Emi Buendia. Let's get it straight. But what he would give you is that control, and he can progressively play the type of passes forward. We saw at the back end of last season what he's capable of. So for me, it would be he starts in the middle of the park. If you wanted 2 in there, you put legs in and around it, whether it's Topic, whether it's Maatsen, the one who could maybe wrap around him and do the things that he's not naturally good at as a central midfielder. But he has to be in the midfield, whether it's a 2, whether it's a 3, because what do we have otherwise? We have McLean, Topic, Maatsen, all very, very similar, seemingly, types of midfielders. And none of them have given Norwich that control, which then means Sargent isn't isolated. Sargent isn't coming back into his own half, trying to win flick-ons like at Portman Road. And you've got aimless, support options in Cernach and Jurasek who aren't really offering anything at all. So, I mean, complete agreement. And, I bowled that man in pre-Wrexham. When is Jacob Wright coming back in?
a few times, to be fair.
What is, we can ask him again, but he'll come back with the same thing that, I rate him. And, I think he's a good player. I think his answer to that question pre-Wrexham as well. He's had to adapt to a different head coach and he's had to take that on board. And, he will come back a better player, to paraphrase what Manning said. Well, if he is, we aren't seeing it. And more to the point, Liam Manning doesn't feel that's the case. Otherwise, he'd be in his midfield by now. So, on that measure, he is bang to rights for me. Yeah, why we aren't seeing Jacob Wright in that central midfield for Norwich?
We have asked him a few times. We will, I'm sure, ask him again in the future. You asked just a couple now to finish off. You asked Liam Manning yesterday. These 2 away games: Derby today, Swansea on Saturday. Is it crunch time for him? His response was quite definitive. He said no. He was never going to say yes. Let's have it right. But what's your view? Do you feel they are decisive for him and his post as Norwich City's head coach?
Well, the job that me and you do, Connor, we take soundings from the people who matter inside that football club, and from the top down, post Saturday, there's no sense I'm getting that they want to pull the button and fire Liam Manning. That is
a lot of talk about injuries, isn't it?
Well, the next point was that, and Liam Manning himself in his last 2 pressers, the theme has been injured players coming back, they'll be better. That is the feeling inside that football club as well. Higher up the food chain, no, because I don't think they looked at when they had those players. I don't think bringing Krzeni, Duffy, Quistgarden back in, who are the next 3 cabs off the rank, improves them in terms of structure, in terms of control, creativity.
I mean, if we're talking Diallo as well, I mean, he's not going to be back till the new year.
No, he's not in the mix.
Forson obviously is getting a little bit closer, but we've not seen him since the opening day. And where does he fit into this team? Difficult. Chris Goran again. We can talk about him as an attacking option. Is he going to touch the ball? Which sort of stems from the conversations that we've just had. If we were talking about a team that had performed up here, had got injuries, and then had kind of nosedived, I think I'd maybe be a little bit more receptive to that argument. But it's just not what we've seen, is it?
Absolutely not. But that is, as I say, the sense from inside the football. You're asking me, is this definitive tonight and Saturday? No, I don't think it is.
No, I mean,
because they clearly feel as a club, and Liam Manning himself has said it in his last few pressers, when we get these injured players back, then we'll have competition, we'll drive the performance levels of the other ones. They know that if they fall below the levels, they can come out the side now because there's someone to go in. All of that is the messaging from inside the football club. So, no, and the only caveat is you come here tonight against a team who haven't won in this league, and if you get at home, if you get a heads gone Wrexham type performance and they walk off the pitch here and have lost 3 or 4, then you're getting into untenable territory because, what is there then to put forward as a positive? And even if he limps on past these 2 away games and they're not necessarily massively improved performances or results, what if Hull come to Carrow Road next and they're the 7th team to leave with a victory? Can you imagine the atmosphere inside the ground? So even if there's no desire,
well, we've had it, though, haven't we, on Saturday?
Well, yeah, but it'll be that and that again against Hull if these 2 games go the wrong way as well. So, but that's obviously we're in hypotheticals, yeah. But the reality is, in answer to the question, no, the feeling inside that club is he will not be gone if they lose these 2 games because they feel he's almost a victim of circumstance. That's the feeling. I'm not saying me and you agree with that necessarily, and I know a lot of Norwich fans don't agree with it. And as you said to Rob yesterday, what's your answer to the ones who basically are not having you and they're done with you? It'll be all the sweeter when I prove them wrong. Crack on, mate.
Yeah, well, I hope he does because as a human being, I like him a lot. So let's hope he can, and obviously that local angle as well. Look, I can look over the stand there. There's going to be a lot of Norwich fans here tonight who've made it. It's not a hugely long trip, but it's enough of a trip on a Tuesday night to feel it. Will have paid a lot of money for doing so as well. They deserve a performance and to see something as well from this group of players. So let's hope they do. Paddy, will they? What do you say tonight?
You got no idea. I mean, we don't have any idea most weeks when it comes to predictions. But what can you possibly argue with any reason, logic, in terms of what Norwich can do here tonight? Because the evidence is there isn't any, not even circumstantial evidence. But the fact it's a Derby team who are having the same struggles as Norwich. I would say though, they may not have won here this season, but I think they've drawn 3 of the last 4. So they are actually showing that level of resolve to dig in and get results. But the fact that, they must be nervy, they must be fearing that their crowd will turn maybe if they don't start this game very well. So it does lend you to think it might be a draw tonight. Maybe they'll shake hands at 1-1 and they'll both disappear into the night and they'll be reasonably happy with that. But that doesn't, for me, move things too much forward, if any, under Liam Manning and Norwich. But yeah, I mean, unless you're going to stagger me, I don't think you're going for an away win, are you? So yeah, draw, mate, for me, 1-1.
Yeah, agreed. I can see a 1-1 absolute slugfest. If I'm being completely honest, Derby yet to really ignite either, but as you say, with that attacking talent and against this Norwich City team, you can never write that fully off. Look, Norwich have got to come here tonight for me and produce a performance, show some positive signs, so that next Swansea, when we're having this conversation, we can say, well, actually, what about at Derby, where X pushed themselves forward, or they showed this really nice pattern of play to score a goal. They've had a shot. Yeah, Josh Sargent got the ball inside the penalty area. And those type of things would be really nice. So yeah,
they picked up a man in the box.
I tell you, I'm going to go oddly specific. I'm going to go 1-1, and I'm going to go 2 set piece goals. That's what I'm going to go for tonight.
Oh, great. We're in for a great hour and a half here, aren't we?
We're in for an absolute thriller. Pinken.com, the place to go throughout the evening. Apologies again for the sound issues at the start. No idea what happened there, but we've got you through on the phone at least. Pinken.com, the place to go throughout the evening. This man will be speaking to Liam Manning after the full-time whistle, and let's hope it's a bit more of an upbeat evening for Norwich City. See you soon.